Welcome to the We Fucking Love Startups podcast. I'm your host, Troy Hammond, and on today's episode, we're chatting with Julie Reddish. Julie Reddish is the head of people and culture at Optimal Workshop and was the original happiness engineer at Xero. And so on this podcast, you'll hear a lot about how you can bring teams together, how you can create self-assembling, self-managing teams, and I hope you enjoy it.
Kia ora. Thanks for tuning into the We Fucking Love Startups podcast, brought to you by Talent Army.
So Julie Reddish, for me, burst on the scenes at Xero, right? Like I was saying before, I remember a few people were like talking about, Xero's got this happiness engineer person. And I was like, what the fuck does a happiness engineer do?
That's
and they
so
were like,
funny.
I don't know. And I was like, well, is it HR? Is it? And they were like, no, I think she sits in the technology team. And I was like, man, engineers are going to fucking hate that. Someone running around thinking, wanting to be happy because they're all like engineers with their hoodies on and, trying to be too cool to pretend they're happy.
Yeah.
But the feedback I heard was just phenomenal across the board. Like everyone kept saying, she's HR, but she doesn't know it.
Right.
That's
hilarious. She's
working just to bring people together and help, like make sure that people are working on separate things and help coach and path them. And so, So how did that all come about? Like where did you just explode on the scene from?
Well, I was from managing a centre of education in Perth, and it was my dream job. I had my 3 kids. I'd done that. I was the first centre manager who'd had toddlers, and being full time. So I really forged a path as a mother and a leader. And that was a company that had 53 offices around the world and based in San Francisco. And I'd been part of that company for 18 years, or was part of it for 18 years. And it really got complete for me in Perth. Like it wasn't going to be something that I was going to do again, because it was way massive hours, like owning your own business. And I had these little people that I could see I wanted to be there. For at least their middle years and teenage years. Anyway, so I thought, I'm just going to get a normal job now. Except I couldn't really get a normal job after my dream job. And everyone, when I came back to Wellington, was like, you've got to talk to Xero. And I was like, what the hell is Xero? And they're like, it's really taking off. It's this thing. And I was like, okay. So I applied for one job and didn't get an interview. And then I applied for product team coordinator, Bradley Scott's, just come on the scene. New general manager, I can't remember even if he was general manager then, but the leader of product. Yeah. And he had these incredible female developers mostly. And there were some men as well who had that knack of inducting people really well, caring about what the code.
These the people leads, they called them?
No, I don't think they were even people leads then. They were, it was more like team members who took on, they could see this thing was growing and growing. And then you'd have, at that point, it was 5 cities of developers. So we had San Francisco, Auckland, Canberra, Melbourne, and Auckland. And they needed to talk more than anyone else needed to talk. And if the code breaks in Wellington, it affects people in San Francisco. It doesn't, none of the other teams need to talk. Marketing can have different marketing campaigns in different countries. It's very, very different. But anyway, so these people were, by that time, senior developers who were just caring out of the goodness of their heart. It wasn't in their job description, but they brought teams together. And Bradley could see there was a sort of massive imbalance of these skilled people who ought to be leaders and were kind of always drawn back into these things. He says, I need someone who can be the glue that they bring and be the organisery type person who can talk tech speak, who can connect really well and connect people really well, and has learning, has development, has events, I remember looking at the job description and going, have you literally stalked me? And looked at because I was like a TV host at Saturn Television. I was an event specialist at New Zealand Post. I had presented for 18 years and had seminar leading and creating awesome leaders around me. And And I was like, this is the weirdest job description I've ever seen. Also, I love it. I don't care what it's called. I'll just be there. And then
what was it initially called?
Product Team Coordinator.
Yeah. Great title.
Can you imagine, right? Yeah. Anyway, the first interview was terrible. I bombed so badly. I remember talking to the recruiter going, I don't think he liked me. Yeah. I just think it was just so dead, and the atmosphere was like, or maybe that was the second one, because the first one was with the female developers, and they were like, I love her. Let's start making plans. And the second one, I was like, no, it was with Bradley. And then what he told me is, he asked, I have a vision for this place technically. What I'm not great at is the people side. Yeah. And I need someone next to me actually coordinating and creating these opportunities. I don't even know what they're going to be yet, but I need an offsider like that. So I was working directly with the GM of product. Yeah. And it was a really special time of like doubling in size 2 years in a row. Yeah. And so I think for my first few months, I did induction after induction after induction. It was technical inductions. It was really awesome because my dad did the first develop computer software degree, Victoria University, 1971, really? First one.
Awesome.
So he was plugging in cards and things. So I'd been around him, always had a computer, had worked for him testing software, didn't know it was testing software. I was a software tester. Yeah. I would come across, he did the police databases, and I cleaned his database and made it into a CRM tool, except I kept coming across crime scene photos.
Oh, yeah.
And so I knew developer language, I'd been in software, and I'd done all these things, and then within 3 weeks, I remember sitting in the bullnose in Market Lane, and somebody came up to me and they said, "You know, you're not a product team coordinator." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they're like, "We're going to do a poll. We don't think you should be called that." And I was like, "Oh, please don't do a poll." Like we had Yammer, so they put out a poll.
Wow, this is giving me so many flashbacks of Yammer. Yeah.
It was like 10 options, like guru of connection and all this.
Where did
these
names come from? People.
This was crowdsourced. Like everything in Xero was crowdsourced. Yeah. And Happiness Engineer was like the most far and away winner. And I was just like, who the hell put that up? And why did you all vote for it? Anyway, that was it. I was a happiness engineer within 3 weeks.
And did your position description change, or was just like you?
What did happen then? We made it official. Like, I don't think anyone quite had control over product at that time. It was like, what's product doing? Whatever they like to do, they've got to get on with the job. So it was the groundswell of people going, "No, she's a happiness engineer, and this is going to be." And then Bradley was like, "Oh yeah, we'll change it," and then we changed it, and it became official. And I was like, whatever, I'll just do my job, which was inductions, events, communication, and training. Yeah. And the thing that was a little bit magic was people didn't really understand how you can create things happening from people just by saying yes to them. Yeah. Like all they needed was permission. And I had like an amazing remit, which was like, "Can we do this?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure." So I'd literally walk the floor. I remember I had 2 hours a day of just floating and listening. And sometimes I'd just sit by people's desks and just whatever would come out would be perfect. Yeah. We had this, celebration of people. And because I always think when you welcome, it's a very New Zealand thing, but you welcoming people and clearing the day, like actually stopping and creating something. And when people come, like you have to stop and create. This is like a situation that their life changes. They're in a whole brand new place. They need to form connections, have this group of people get on, and that kind of ways of being, like how you're going to act together, how you're going to relate together, how you're going to exist together. No one really pays attention to that. Yeah. But it's when you do it well, it's like magic. Suddenly we love each other,
Well, that's the hardest thing, right? Because so companies scaling is hard, right?
Yeah.
And scaling culture,
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why it's hard is because as you get bigger, it naturally becomes isolated pockets
Yeah.
everywhere, right? And
Yeah.
so trying to keep that communication, keep that emotional connection between
Yeah.
each other is really challenging.
Yeah. I really love it. I'm like, whatever, 5 countries, easy. Let's do, like, I've just come from 53, like, no hard. And I think it was the being able to get people knowing each other before they have the shit hit the fan. So there is this a Green Bay Packers story. I don't know if you've heard the rise of the free agent, right?
No.
So in America, the football team,
NFL.
yeah, NFL. So in free agency, it's very different to legacy people who would stay with their team, have loyalty. This is your career. You're now like a Green Bay Packer forever, blah, 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 blah. All went away when the power of the salary got into the players' hands.
Yeah.
And what Green Bay Packers figured out was you had 52 people, and any time you get, I can't remember how many are on the field at one time, but basically someone could be injured, someone could be traded, you needed to be integrated before you play the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so the people who would not normally mix, they made them mix. So if you have the defensive linemen who are like big, burly black men who would be like all in their crew, and then the quarterbacks who are not, they're doing
usually pretty boy white
guys, right? And so what Green Bay Packers did was you all have to eat with different people and room with different people, and so you get to know different people, and everyone had to read the playbook every week at the beginning of the week. So everyone knew what you were doing and you had that communication going, but you also knew everybody.
Yeah.
He had a connection with everyone. So at any time you could assemble a team and play the game. And it blew people out of the water when that time, like everyone else was struggling, free agency, everyone can go where they want. But it's the same with developers. You've got this incredible resource of technical humans who can go anywhere they want in the world and command a price anywhere they want. They don't go for money, but they go for who I work with and how much, how much autonomy do I have and how much am I valued by my teammates, and is it really good to work with people? I totally disagree with what you said about the hoodies and the basement thing, which is part of the thing of misunderstanding developers was one of the major rallying cries, which probably get back into. But I think that thing of integration and people having opportunities to know each other, which is donut meeting. Like we set up donut meetings before they were on Slack. And
what are donut meetings?
We had 3 buildings because we were building another building. So we had to split. The product team was very, very sad. The mobile team and the banking team had to move away, and you're going to be like 400 meters away. It was a big thing about them moving away and how disconnected they'd be. So what I did was I moved down with them and sat with the teams, and then created donut meetings. So people would randomly, every 2 weeks, there'd be 2 people from each of the different squads that were on the floor, be sat at a table. I'd put a box of donuts in the middle, and I'd sit there and go like, oh, Dale, you haven't met Jane. Jane likes border collies. Dale likes his bike and going for bike rides on the weekend. And everyone, and it would like kind of start, and then there'd be another donut meeting, and then I think we did it for about 6 months, and then someone goes, Julie, Slack have stolen your idea and they've got donut bot. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, random donut meetings came up. And
awesome.
Yeah, so it had got through the ether there that I don't know, that was what I heard, but I don't think it was true that I made up donut meetings.
I like to believe that. I like to believe that.
But so I think that was really important to connect people.
Yeah. When did you realise that what you and Bradley or you had created was a thing that was actually really needed in the industry? I
think it was a lot when the team leads we were trying to train the team leads, and we were training the team leads. Like holy cow, they had to learn a lot. Like okay, great, you've congratulations, Dale. You've become a team lead. You're a great developer. Now you got these people.
Yeah.
Like Dale's like, I don't know about this. And
Yeah.
you're like, you're great. You like these people. Yeah, I like them. But, what about when they want to go and leave? How do I make decisions about whether that's okay? And what about them progressing their career? And what do I tell them to learn? And then how do I tell them what who tells them what the strategy is? Who do I talk to for this and this and this layer? And there was a bunch of HR things, and there was a bunch of learning and development things, and there was a bunch of salary things, and there was a bunch of influence things that you're like, I don't know if you need to know all this. Some of this I can just take.
Yeah.
Because it is natural and normal for me to just have that flow, whereas for you it's really unnatural, and there's certain things that you're great at, you should keep being great at. And some of the things I were really great at was like leading technically and technical mentorship, and then and knowing and actually upskilling people in how to best have more technical humans be as great as them.
Yeah.
It didn't necessarily mean that they were great as manager type people, but we only had like one HR person for 600 people. So they didn't really know the people. I knew the people. I'd inducted every single member of those teams, and also I can, like, normal people can keep about like 150 people in their head. I can keep 500.
Yeah.
So so that skill is not necessarily like, you don't need to have every person become, I'm a fabulous people-y person. There's certain parts of it that you need.
Do you think, so as someone that's recruitment, and I've worked in internal teams, I worked at Vendor, I sat in the people and culture team, people tend to look at HR or people and culture as either, like, I think more in the olden days, right? It was, they work for the business. They don't really work for me.
Yeah.
And so there was a challenge about sometimes scaredness of going to HR.
Yep.
But then do you think because you didn't have that title?
Absolutely.
And people just loved going to you?
I definitely think the not HR bit was really, especially when I had the opportunity to travel and make sure my pockets of champions, I think I called them, that you'd have someone in San Francisco who would do all the inductions with you and help craft the next range of inductions. And so going there and having them experience me and experience, sometimes I'd take a couple of senior devs, but the best thing was when they came to Wellington for the Young Conference, which is freaking fabulous. But having people overseas understand what it was, then other people from other parts of the business would go, hey, we've got these things that are really not working. And I was like, have you taken them to your person? They're like, yeah, that's the person it's not really working with. And you're like, okay, so what can we do? And there was a lot of times I find myself knowing things and getting things and then making action happen, or like sometimes it was too dangerous for people to take action themselves, honestly. It just, those things about, if you're the whistleblower, you're the one who does have something happen to you, is true. But being able to go, wait, the system's broken. If these people have something that's in the way of their happiness and they're not able to get it out, then that should be something I'm raising. Because if I'm genuinely here for this company's success, then there's got to be a way that these things can be communicated. And I ended up like hearing about things that they wouldn't have come to their HR person about.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was not directly in product, but because of the relationship I had with product, everyone knew that I was someone who could be trusted and actually had genuine
gave a shit.
Yeah, I really did. I don't like to say that because that was like one of our values in another company, but it really was authentic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I cared about the values of the company being expressed really, like including, because values are only really useful when you can cut it out when they're not being done
Yeah.
well. That's not very good England, but having someone go, that's not okay.
Yeah.
And having that boundary and so, yeah.
I think like you were just humanizing things, right? Like making it really human, people centric.
Yeah. Yeah. And being a space.
Yeah.
That's a real thing of like a space of people being able to bring anything.
Yeah.
And it not, because I didn't have any I didn't have somebody to report to. I didn't have a mandate to go and report on things. I just was like, that doesn't work.
How were you measured? How was your role?
Good question.
Yeah.
I haven't had to really deal with measurement until this role.
Yeah.
And but there was a couple of things that I would do survey-wise about how each induction went. Was super important, and people's experience there. And then every event I did, I had surveys on effectiveness and value, and then afterwards what people actually brought into the product or usefulness, especially like hackathons, like really formalizing hackathons on the Atlassian model, like stealing the Atlassian model, being inspired by others. Absolutely. Yeah. And then having really, how do people rate me? Gosh, I can't even remember. I think I would ask people how I'm doing, but there was no measurement from my job that directly had outcomes to the business. It was all very ethereal.
You just felt it, right?
Felt it, but also like the things that I would produce would speak for themselves.
Yeah.
Like when I had 24 of the 80 or 60 in San Francisco come to Wellington for the unconference with 500 people, and the way they went home and just became more Xero, became the values, actually got it, really had connections with people, started propagating culture on their own. Yeah. Because it was like, it's important that you come.
Well, that's when culture is authentic, right? Yeah. Because you're living and breathing it, and you actually you care about the person on the other side of the world.
That's right. Because you know them and you've seen them, or you've had that experience. Like we had for the first time, doing a proper unconference where people got to elevate whatever topics they wanted to, and we had this overwhelming attended mental health caring one in the library of Wellington High School, because that's where we had the unconference, and it was like packed to the rafters, everyone going, we really care about this topic and it's not being dealt with, and we don't get an opportunity to really see. It was after suicide of one of our developers, and it was just like, we're not talking about this enough.
Yeah.
And the heartfelt like care that people had for their colleagues, and that was unmistakable.
You're going to make me cry, Julie.
It's the kind of thing that I need. Where are the tissues?
Yeah, I know. Dom, Jono, can we grab some tissues? Someone, please. Anyone help? But I think
I should have had a trigger warning on that.
That's what I love about you, Julie, though, is like it's authentic that you give a shit, and it's that's so why, like, because obviously you went from Xero, you worked, you'd sort of realize what your passion was, right? You'd realize there was a career for me in tech here, and so this whole it's like crew chief.
Yeah, crew champion. Yeah, we named ourselves that one.
Yeah. And so you went to Flux, right? Yeah. Crew champion. Yeah. The same thing again there in terms of...
Similar. They wanted to name it like, let's have a lot of happiness engineers. I was like, no, don't ever... Like, one of the things it turned into was, Optimal Workshop stole it and had their own happiness engineers, which was fantastic. And they're all amazing people who had careers in Optimal. It wasn't quite the same... job description. It was
making juices and
it was different things.
Doing what people needed.
And doing what people needed there. But I think the thing that was replicated from it was somebody outside the team who wasn't in your line management layers, or actually we didn't have line management layers, but would be like, okay, how are we going to support these self-organizing teams? Yeah. How are we going to have them?
Because was Xero self-organizing teams?
Yep.
Or what? Yeah.
Yep. And they had, I don't know, they had definitely team leads.
Yeah.
And they were also in the team, but also team leads.
Yeah.
And then they had other tech leads who weren't in the team and things like that. So I wasn't really connected with the working part of software, bar the courses that I'd put people on, or people would do, Agile 101 and things like that, and facilitation and all sorts of things. But I used to go into teams and do what we'd call what did we call them? It's like a setup, an initial setup, where you would spend half a day with a team and actually get them connecting as people, working on a problem together and formulating as a team. And every time one person came in, you'd have another formulation. And I did 29 of them across the cities, 29 of these formulation events where you'd bring the team together and actually get them connected and working as a team. And Scrum Masters do a similar thing. Like, there's a whole smorgasbord of facilitation you can do. But when we wanted crew champions there, we were like, we had Scrum Masters who could do that stuff. And we were Scrum Masters outside the team. No, Scrum Masters were in the team. We were outside the team with the tech leads. Yeah. So it's the people who are technically leaders, and us were the people leaders. And those people deliberately outside of the team because they have a real power imbalance. Yeah. As soon as you are accountable for the direction of, the technical, where it goes, or the people side of it, and improving people's lives and doing all their we're going to advocate for their money, shouldn't be anywhere near that team. That team should be clean and egalitarian and all have very similar power dynamics. Yeah. So it was a really true application of, or as true as we can make it, of scaled agile.
So what is, for people that don't know what self-managing, self-organising teams, what is that?
It's where you can have
you just fire all your managers, right? Is that
very funny. No, you have enough in a team that can build working software in incremental pieces. So you have a number of developers, a designer, product person, a scrum master if you do that, and they have enough to actually make decisions about the part of the product that they own or have the knowledge, the domain knowledge about, and they can basically bring an idea in and make it into a piece of working software by themselves with no other people.
So where did they get that nugget of information enough?
Is that just that's a good question, because
strategy,
it's generally at a quarterly kickoff or a planning session, or there's places where you get to actually either choose or be given the work based on what your domain knowledge is. Yeah. And it's really best if the team are choosing, what they're building, because then they're buying in. Yeah. They are excited by it's theirs, and it doesn't have to be free for all. It's about technically looking at what actual team would work and actually having a conversation with them as equals. And the thing about self-organising teams is you make decisions close to where the product's being built.
Yeah. So, and what are the pros and cons of self-organising teams?
I think you've got lots of cons when it comes to visibility of people who are outside who need to make decisions about what gets built and need people to kind of stick to timelines. Yeah. There's just a discrepancy about timelines and people making promises, because often the complexity of what you're building means that you find this thing that actually you didn't know existed, and if you don't communicate, you're that's 2 or 3 months more than we think is going to happen. So that really doesn't work for people who are decision makers, who are perhaps on the C-level, and funders, people who want to actually see results, sometimes struggle with no command and control. Yeah. So I think it's a real education piece of how software actually gets built, and the way that especially high-tech software and the complexity of it, and having a knowledge industry, it takes domain knowledge that is so freaking specialized. And those people also have to compromise, because they can often get into I want to make it real perfect. And that's, the joy is of solving problems until they're complete. Whereas sometimes, having good enough is okay. Yeah. And that's sometimes a hard thing, especially if you leave technical debt worked on later and untidied. It's so demoralizing for a team to work over technical debt.
Pro is definitely culture, right? Like, so I think Optimal is doing it really well. So you're now head of people, is your title?
I'm head of people and culture.
Head of people and culture.
Yep.
Excuse me.
That's okay.
So I remember Andrew Mayfield came to me one day and he was like, "Oh, I don't want to have to hire all these managers, but I don't know how to do it." And he was like, "Do you know if there's anyone out there that could sort of help me just think about that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I know a person." And so I set you and Andrew up for a chat and you went for a walk along the waterfront
we walked around the waterfront.
Yeah.
And Andrew told me all about like how they had
holacracy, wasn't it?
They tried to they did implement a version of holacracy. And I think the thing that was missing was just some of the boundaries and guidance. Because the thing, when you don't have a manager, there's certain things that the manager does do, which if you just take it away without replacing it with anything,
chaos.
So I had a little, just kind of, oh, right, okay, we'll probably need to do that. And when I got there, I think the thing that was so beautiful was the connections that people had and the unsiloed way that people would just do business every day. Like they would bring in salespeople and they would chat to the customer success and they would like listen to the head of design and they would just be like no boundaries between people or no silos. But the thing that was hard was I don't know how to progress. And I don't know how to advocate, and diversity of like it having your own, being a self-managing person really works for people who can advocate for themselves, are very extroverted, have really good eloquent ways of saying things, and also have knowledge of how you actually get around a structure when there's no structure. So it didn't work for people who were marginalized or had neurodiversity that meant that they weren't, savvy with all the people quirks. So, it just wasn't fair. Yeah. And
so most people, like most founders or anyone that I talk to that, hears about this, they're like, oh, wouldn't they just, like not work and, they just hide and, if you don't have a manager, right, how am I supposed to motivate them to do their job?
They're talking to the wrong people. These are people who are like, you have to stop them working.
Yeah.
They are so passionate about like what gets getting solved is that you have to go like, you can't work at this time. Shut the laptop and also take holidays. Like, let's talk about you taking some time off. Yeah. This is one of the major conversations we have. Can we talk about like the size of your annual leave balance? It's so opposite to trying to force people to do something or monitor them. It's more about like, are you including them in the right conversations? Are we not having too many meetings? Is there room for them to focus? Are you giving these people the best flourishing opportunity to do their best work?
So you've done that you've got a team of practice coaches, you call them now.
Practice coaches.
Yeah,
whoop, whoop.
At Optimal.
Yeah.
And I remember when you came to me and said, hey, I'm looking for practice coaches, I was like, what the hell do they do? So what do they do?
So they're people who look after the people, and they're not managers. So they co-parent. I say co-parent because like mum and dad have equal responsibility, but they have different roles. So you co-parent with a faculty leader, and the faculty leader is someone who's a head of a faculty or craft like design or development or
people.
Well, I have people, but that's a bit more complicated. More like customer success, sales, like head of that, and they like know their domain
model.
Yeah. Squadification model, and they have domain knowledge for their experts. Like you talk to someone in engineering, and you're talking about the domains of each part of the code base, each part of like the onboarding process and things. Or they have like that ferried out within the faculty, but you will talk to them as a practice coach about their development and their personal stuff because they can come to you. They know you as a human being and a whole person. They can, do your leave and know the details of that, and they'll keep it confidential if you want them to or not. There's some things, of course, you have to go like, I'm going to share this because this is really knowledge that, and we've got a chief as well. So you've got your chief, faculty lead, and your practice coach, and they surround support. Somebody represents you on the senior leadership team, somebody represents your craft, and someone represents you as an individual.
Yeah.
So you've got these three advocates, and so instead of the what's it called when you have a dilemma? Yeah. Somebody says, "Oh, my grandmother's just died. I really need some time off," and there's this pressing deadline. You can go separate those two worlds.
Yeah, you can go to the practice coach for that.
Yeah, go to the practice coach for that, and then the head of has a really good relationship with you too. Like having a practice coach does not negate everyone else having great skills with people, because it elevates everyone else. Because we do training and we do escalation of issues, and people get more and more trained in how to be better at interactions, and it elevates everyone. And each practice coach now is aligned to a head of. So it used to be that you could pick your practice coach. Election time, I really want blah, 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 which was awful for us. But now it's like they're aligned. They know the business. They know the results that need to produce. They're here coaching you in service of an outcome. Yeah. Not just like, what do you want to do and grow in.
So there's someone listening that, right? And I'm gonna be the
black hat.
Yeah, black hat here, right?
Yeah.
They go, oh, why don't you just hire managers? You've got all these practice coaches running around. What's the difference between hiring managers and practice coaches?
It's the amount of labour emotionally that it takes for somebody who is naturally, and I'm going to say technically minded, but I don't mean it in a like...
Just domain focus.
Yeah, it's domain focus. If you are switching between emotional brain and logical brain, it takes 90 seconds every time you do that to actually get into, I got to go be empathetic now to this person, and now I've got to go like steer them towards this business result. It's too much context switching for somebody. Yeah. If somebody can just do a great job at their domain and have like, all I'm talking about is where we're going is in our craft and what we're doing. And there is a whole job in that. Yeah. If you have to add on like all the, and now we're going to talk about cohesion and facilitation, because those people are great. People at facilitating, they understand mental health first aid. They have different like domain specialties. Like I've got somebody who's excellent at all the personality types and getting like a whole team balanced and understanding each other and testing them. I've got someone who's fantastic in agility and understands how product gets built. So they have a real seat on the product leadership team. Yep. Like, because we don't have Scrum Masters, we don't have Agile specialists, but if we have one of my team has that domain knowledge, they can upskill all the other coaches. Awesome. Yeah. And everyone gets better.
You need a lot less of them, right?
You need a lot less of them, yeah. Because everyone in those teams is also like generally great at that. They're very good communicators. As I was saying about like, I don't like that distinction of developers are hoodies and it's not my experience, and it's also kills the ability for people to come into the industry, because you have to be great at communication to be in one of these product teams. Yeah. Number one, everyone's public speaking all the time.
I think the days of like I take the piss of developers.
I think it still exists. But you and I don't work in government.
No, yeah. Well, even government's changing now, right?
Really?
So yeah, I think developers just aren't backroom. Like server side, in the server rooms anymore, right? Like we have to communicate. No, it doesn't matter what your function is now. Yeah. You have to be able to communicate.
Yeah. And I think that whole thing of stereotyping people and putting them into boxes is part of the bullshit. Yeah. And it's really about everybody is a whole person, and they are nuanced, and they're like dealing with stuff like, how do I have this great experience for women between 45 and 60. Yeah. Shit. Menopause leave anyone? Yeah. Can we just make that normal? Yeah. Can I have dads be able to take parental leave and have the same benefits? That'd be cool. Yeah. I mean, part of having a whole experience now is looking at our policies that can really back up a great people experience and going like, let's frickin' make this the way that we do things. And like B Corp, being a B Corp certified place is so good because
talk me through that, because that's a pretty cool achievement. There's not many in Wellington.
No, there's more and more coming, but you can actually.
What is it for a start for people that don't know?
B Corp is, can't remember what B stands for, but it's awesome, and it's about measuring that you are a sustainable and responsible employer. So
what's B Corp stand for, Jono? Can you look that up for us?
Yeah, look that up. It's great. It's on one of my links. It's you look at, hey, does your company where do your suppliers come from? Are they local? What's the carbon footprint of your company?
Yeah.
Do you have sustainable hiring practices? How many women do you have in your leadership team and senior leadership team and owners and funders, and how many people in each of the management teams if we have management people? How diverse is your population? It's literally like this massive deal to answer, and you get points. There's a point system, and you have to score a minimum of X number of points to be B Corp certified and keep that for 3 years. And it's a way to actually measure around the world people doing what they say they're going to do, not just lip service to, oh yeah, we're really environmentally sustainable and diverse.
Holding you to account, right? Like living by what you say you want to be. What's it?
B and B Corp stands for benefit.
Benefit Corporation.
Benefit Corporation.
There you go. I would have picked that.
So it's for the benefit
of
the world, and it gives something back, and it doesn't take. So it's a real sustainable ethos.
Yeah.
But I think the thing about the world of everyone saying they're responsible and actually being responsible is two different things.
Yeah.
So to have an international measurement like that is internationally recognised and incorporated is so good.
Well, yeah, it's awesome. I mean, the only general time you see people doing this is when they're tendering for something, they need it, or when their VC is doing due diligence, quick shit, get all this stuff. And
it was our CEO, Andrew, who was like, this is us. Let's see how much we already have just by the way that we do business, and he was right. There wasn't much to tweak and get to get above the minimum.
Yeah, I would have assumed you were B Corp certified before you were B Corp, right?
Because I think it was just about formalizing, because the thing about being a startup is you don't really formalize a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that is really needed for it to be passed on. So if I leave, how is the next person going to do it the same way I did it? Only if there's a policy.
Yeah.
So it's like putting into words and policizing, that might be a word, so it will sustain after you.
Yeah, awesome. Oh, that's good. And where do you learn all this, Julie? Like, who are your heroes, or what companies are your like, they are great?
I do a lot of blog reading about I do a lot of neuroscience reading. Yep. I love the brain work, and I do a lot of anthropology reading and anything to do with societies and groups and organizations and how they work. So I like to not just stay in tech. I think tech there is a number of things that we're doing really well. Like I loved Atlassian's work on how they ship it and how they create those teams, and I did love the Spotify world, and then it's just like, well, did they put it into reality, and how did they evolve from that?
Well, the truth is that a lot of Spotify did behind the scenes, like they had this beautiful
look great
behind the scenes it was a bit of a clusterfuck there.
That's right. It's about taking it for what it works for you.
Yeah.
The parts of it that work for you and the parts that don't. So there's never like a great, this is going to solve everything. Yeah. It's just, let's try and experiment. I think Brene Brown is a major inspiration of like research-based humanity at work, and bringing just how to be a great person who can persuade and not like other people, and then there's like a top 10 in tech. I love that. Like every week I get this little checklist of stuff that's happening in our high tech world and the kind of wow, this company's published this, how they did this thing and are sharing it with everyone. The thing I love about tech is you go, hey, I found out a thing. I'm going to publish all about it and tell you how to do it too. And you're like, yay, let's all share.
100% share. Yeah. Well, that's great. That's how we learn, right?
Yeah, and progression.fyi, like everyone's put their growth frameworks up.
Yeah.
And gone like, this is how we develop a developer. This is how we develop a designer. And you're like, oh, sweet. Let's repurpose that for our needs. And like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah.
Or even like the, how are we going to pay these people? Oh, cool. Let's go. I'm on my 7 Slack channels of people sharing stuff and getting, this is what we're benchmarking our ones at. Here's how we work out this formula for underrepresented groups. And then, Culture Amp getting their data involved with other people. And Bamboo HR have these like whatever systems the tech companies are using. They've got blogs and they got people thinking about these things behind the scenes and kind of aggregating how we're all doing. So you can benchmark yourself against the APAC top 5% and see, oh, what are they doing? So, yeah, there's a lot, like using data much more is really cool now.
Yeah, I hear there's a really good salary data product coming out soon.
One day.
So, I mean, there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes in people and culture. And I think, like, as someone that sat in that team, like, a lot of people don't realize exactly what's going on in that team for a start.
Sometimes you can't tell them.
Well, you can't, yeah. And nor should you.
No.
Right? And so, but like, I think it sounds like you're doing more traditional HR things these days, but from the same
I
guys?
I think I rebelled against the title HR because of what you said before about like it's for the company.
Yeah. Well, that's for me. HR is the olden days where it was company focused.
Yeah.
People and culture or people and experience or whatever they're calling it now.
Yeah.
Is definitely more focused to employee experience.
Yeah, and to like doing the employee experience design school with Samantha and co has been life affirming.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, you're on the right track, right time, using design centered thinking.
Yeah.
But also ask the damn people.
Yeah.
But also don't rely on what they tell you.
Yeah.
That's the thing, like, I mean, I always say this at work, like I work for a research company or, IA company, and I don't often, listen to the audience because oftentimes the things that are actually going to get you somewhere are things that you just do.
Yeah.
One of our talks at UXNZ was this researcher who was just like researching which product to put which aisles things on in the supermarket and countdown. And she was just like, why do we call this feminine hygiene? It's not for feminine. What's feminine about this? And also people who are not feminine use this. And hygiene, seriously, are we dirty? What's happening now? She's just like, period care. And she's like, it didn't poll the audience, just like period care. And then next minute, international headlines. Oh, we're finally calling it what it is. And every supermarket around the world was copying Countdown New Zealand, who had their researchers just go, it's called period care, let's call it what it is. And it's like everyone's copied them. But it's like stuff like that, you go, if you just poll the audience, you're going to get an aggregation of what they already have done, nothing to do with what's possible and what's future thinking.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a foot in both camp going, oh, okay, I hear what you say. I get that. And I do acknowledge that and like show people what you've gotten and then go, here's what we're actually going to do.
Yeah.
And so it's a real balance of creativity and listening.
Yeah. So a lot of what we talked to today, people would say that works once you're a bigger size company.
Yeah.
How does this like people-centric, like self-managing teams, self-assembling teams work if you're a smaller company? Like if you're an earlier stage startup, is this something that you should be thinking about straight away?
I think you should have it be in your leadership team from the get-go.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing that I firmly believe if your CEO doesn't believe it, then you're not going to be there.
Yeah.
And you're not going to get there.
So what could they be doing? Like if they're a team of 20, 10 people now, like what are the simple things that they can start doing?
I think getting somebody who's got a really good grounding in psychology or anthropology, any of the BA subjects, as a person on your leadership team, person who is a true people-centric person who like authentically cares about the people and how they're interacted with, and that it's matching what your product says.
Yeah.
Because the people, like if you're building something and you say, hey, customers, this is what's going to do to you, blah, 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 awesome, and you don't do that for your own staff, like that's bullshit. And it's always going to be bullshit. And you're going to be building bullshit. So you've got to have like that match from the first code that is written is that your people who are actually building it are treated in the same way that you say that your product is going to be great for your customers. And I don't care what you build, you can always match that story up with like the experience has got to be the same. Yeah.
I think like startups that I work with now, like the earlier that you can think about any of these things, the better, right?
Yeah.
So like diversity and inclusion, right? Like it should just be, it should be something that you do from day one.
Yep.
You know, like don't get to the point where you hired 30 white dudes, you know, and then go backwards.
Yeah. Or the same with your people team. Like we had all our people be white women, right? And so it was like truly going to be uncomfortable if any of our next candidates, we couldn't interview one more candidate who is that demographic because we simply weren't going to hire them.
Yeah.
So, and that wasn't discriminatory. It was just like we have to serve our customer base and represent who our customers are, which is our people in New Zealand. We have to reflect our demographic of our customers, and that just simply won't be okay if it doesn't reflect that.
Yeah.
So, the more you can get it as part of the culture from the first 4 people, the better.
Yeah, like it's if you look at any of the startups that have been successful, there's certain factors that they all have in common.
Yeah,
you know, they have storytelling. You know, they're a good leader who's storytelling really well.
Yeah,
they have people that are empathetic, you know, inclusive. You know, early days, so that you know anyone can work there, so that they can hire anyone.
Yes.
You know. And they have people that actually assemble and give a shit about the product. You know, they're working closer together around the table. You know?
Yeah, and I think those things about like traditions that you create as well, like have it be quirky, have it be like somebody loves this shit. Okay, we do fishing. What we do on Thursdays is fishing. And it's like, oh yeah, that company, they go fishing on Thursday afternoons. You know, so it's like those things are important, those traditions and rhythms and you know, places that people belong to. That are quirky.
So tell me about the optimal Christmas party because I thought this was really cool.
Which
there
one?
Was different rooms going for different types of
that was really cool. We got we really put a lot into like listening to people when they talked about the kind of diversity they wanted to see, and it wasn't what you would expect. It was about like, I'm not really into the like rave culture of like whoop whoop DJ and lots of booze, and then my brain needs to chill out. Oh, okay, cool. Well, we've got this compartmentalized office, and the team who put together the party had a really diverse team who were, you know, asked to participate and be included, because everyone who you invite to be on a team to create a party has a great time at the and it's a good party. But they also brought ideas like every room could be a zone of like different games. Mm-hmm. And then you could have like really quiet games in here. You could have speed racer games with like multiplayer in here. You could have like this other thing, and then this public one, joysticks in the public area, and then there was puzzles, and there was like quiet room and silent disco, and I think that went ahead, and just little balconies where there were group and gatherings for people to just come. It was pouring with rain. It was beautiful. Everyone would just sit in the rain and just chill out and be together, and it was awesome.
Yeah, and that for me, because like we talk about diversity, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's just like tarred with one brush, right? Diversity, people think in their mind of male or female, or you know, gender type, or they think about color of skin, you know, or they think. So diversity for me is like that we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different personalities.
Yeah.
We unwind differently. We amp up differently.
Yeah.
And so things like that for me, like really cool to see. You know, like that everyone can go to the Christmas party.
Yeah.
If they need to go and chill out in a quiet room for a little bit, and you know, like re-energy up. Like some people do.
And I think I was just doing the survey from. We had our unconference right next to the Christmas party. It was too much for people.
Yeah.
They needed a day in between, and I'm like, that simply doesn't occur to me as a person who gets energy from people.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, wow, you need like more than a night's rest in between peopling. Like, oh, that's really cool. So you get like, well, how are we going to design it next time so that you can have those ebbs and flows for those people, because it is intense.
Yeah.
Especially when people are working from, Kaitaia and Queenstown and things, and then you go, come to Wellington and we'll all be together. And it's like,
You want to do everything while they're together, right?
yes, and have one extra night.
Yeah.
Like that may be the thing. And it is the thing that when you invest in people, it will cost you more.
Yeah.
And it is something that is not going to be on the list of top really, when you save money on product and how much it is per person spent on people, it's not going to be the cheapest option.
Yeah.
But if you care about people, you will put the money for the long term, including extra days of people of rest so they can be together and maximize it.
Awesome. So, Julie, if you've watched a few of my podcasts, and I assume you're the person that would have, you might know my last question. I always sort of leave people with, what makes you happy? What makes a happiness engineer happy? How do you engineer your happiness?
It's really physical. It's about going and sweating it out, using my body, and then talking.
Yeah.
People, being able to sit with people and really get something resolved for them so that it gets unlocked.
Yeah.
That is like heaven for me, to have a conversation that unlocks something that has been broken or shut away and suddenly is released. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, the competitive kid trying to outdo her brother definitely doesn't appear before us now. And thank you so much for sharing all that. And if people want to see, we'll obviously put some links below, whether they can go up and read a little bit more about what you talked about today. And thanks for coming in.
Thank you. That was fun.
Alrighty. Well, that was an amazing chat with Julie. Probably the first time I've nearly cried hosting a podcast, and future reference, we're going to have tissues under the desk. And so hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please like and share and tell us who you want to hear from next.
This podcast is produced by John Otaka from Empire Films.